Hello, and welcome back to the Tea and Soju Cdrama podcast, your safe spot for Cdrama chatter. I'm your host, Liliana, and it's time to sit back, grab your tea, and let's chat Asian dramas. In today's episode, we have two very special guests, and we are going to be doing a review on the romance of Tiger and Rose. So, just before we get into the podcast, some housekeeping. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on the platform you listen to. That really helps the podcast reach other listeners. For more content, check out Patreon, where you can find behind the scenes, first impressions, movie reviews, and more. Finally, if you would like to chat to me or find a community, check out Discord, Instagram, and other socials. The link for my socials and the guest socials will all be in the episode notes. So, guys, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah. All right, so I will jump in first. My name is Corinne, and I co-host the Sex Love Literature podcast with
Ayanni. Hi. Hello. I am the other co-host of Sex Love Literature, a pop culture podcast, and the producer of the show. We're excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you guys on. I think I discovered you guys when you did the I think it must have been, was it last year that you reviewed? Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Oh, it's a Chinese drama that you guys
Lost You
reviewed.
Forever?
Yeah, Lost You Forever. Oh my God. See what I mean? This happens all the time. Like, I think that's how I came across your podcast, and I was like, you guys, I really like this. So
Oh, thank
that
you.
because you guys did a huge review on that, on that drama,
We
and
did, yeah.
yeah, but it was a really good one. Like I really really enjoyed it. So just so that guests or listeners get to know you a little bit better, just talk about, let's just talk about how did you guys come across, Asian dramas, and then how did that turn into a podcast? Because obviously you don't just do Asian dramas, but how did you guys then decide that you were going to do, a podcast?
Yeah, so that's like that's actually kind of like a good sort of intertwined question.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
so first, I guess how I got into Asian dramas was actually in the summer of 2020 when lockdown was happening.
Oh.
Uh, I happened upon a K-drama on Netflix. The one I started with was Cinderella and the Four Knights, which is like cute. It's
It
fine.
is, yeah.
Like it's fine, and I liked it enough to keep going. And so I watched Crash Landing on You, and then that was it for me with K-dramas. And then a couple years ago, I was starting to get like not bored with K-dramas, but like I wanted something a little different, and I saw a lot of chatter about the C-drama Love Like the Galaxy, and started watching that one, and I was like, oh, I like this. And then that was kind of like
Yeah.
it for me. But like simultaneously in 2020, Ayanni and I, who went to graduate school together, were both, sad and lonely during lockdown. And thought it might be fun to start a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we were watching a lot of the same things and we're talking about a lot of the same things. So it seemed just kind of like a natural progression. And I wanted to get back into podcasting anyway. So I was like, Corinne, why don't we just like record ourselves having conversations? That's a really normal thing to do. And yeah, so we've been doing that for about, I guess, 4 years now. We started in August of 2020 and have just not stopped. But to rewind to the first question, so I've actually been an anime watcher for a really long time. I started back in like middle school, so I won't let you do the math for how long I've been watching anime. So that's kind of like my main into thinking about Asian dramas, but I'd watched some J dramas in high school. And then again in the summer of 2020, Corinne was like, "You need to watch Crash Landing on You," and I was like, "Sure, okay, why not?"
Why not?
And it completely devastated like emotionally. We watched a lot of it together because we were in the same like quarantine bubble. So she would come over to my house, and then we would just sit on the couch and sob.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Drama is a journey.
It was a lot.
It is.
And so that's kind of where I went from there. I'll often take Corinne's recommendation. She's like, "You'll like this one," and I say, "Sure, okay."
I'll try
But
it.
yeah, and then there's some others that I've kind of spiraled off on my own. But I've been watching, I guess, K-dramas pretty consistently, though at a slightly slower clip. Since then.
I'm the binge watcher of the two of us.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm more plodding when it comes to my watching. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to C-dramas, since we're talking about one today, uh Corinne was like, "You need to watch Love Between Fairy and Devil," and I was like, "Sure, I love and devils, so I'll check it out." For some context, some of what I study is like monsters and monstrosities. So she was like, "That's a really easy in for you." And I loved it.
Mm.
It was great. Again, devastated me emotionally. But Romance of Tiger and Rose, I think, is my third C drama that I've
Mm.
watched.
Yeah, so Lost You Forever, I guess, was your second. You
Yeah.
could maybe count that as two because of Lost You Forever 1 and 2, but yeah.
Yeah, there's part 1 and part 2. Yeah. That's because they wouldn't because
Yeah.
that would have been like a 70 episode
Mm-hmm.
drama. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
no, not gonna happen. And it's really annoying because they just missed the cutout for when
Mm-hmm.
they were airing them back to back. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, because that's exactly what happened with Love Like the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
There is 2 parts, but they were like, we'll just air part 1, finish it one day, and then start part 2 the other
Yeah.
day. Those were the good old days. And now everything's is broken up into parts. So I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the dramas have just gone down the route of we're going to be 40 episodes or under
Mm-hmm.
and air it all in one go, because there's a lot of risk in like
Mm-hmm.
waiting a year.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's
Like,
got to keep their noses clean.
Yep. Pay their
pay those
taxes.
taxes. I was gonna say pay those taxes. I think that's like the most common meme amongst like Chinese drama watchers. It's just like, God sake, just pay your taxes for the love of God. Just pay your taxes. So yeah, I think for the safety of the drama as a whole and to try and get like as much money back, a lot of them have just gone down the route of, we'll just be 40 episodes or less. And it's really interesting because I've been doing a throwback series on the podcast where I'm watching like a lot of the older Chinese classic historical
Mm.
dramas. And like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are like 70 episodes and like 80 episodes. And I'm like, this would have just not happened
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. It's just not a done thing. So yeah, but I think when it comes to even now, even with the cut, Chinese historical dramas tend to be like the best of Chinese dramas when it's I'm
Mm-hmm.
they're moderns. There's really good moderns, but their moderns just aren't as good to me when it comes to historicals. That's like where,
Mm-hmm.
where they shine a lot more.
Mm.
So and then how just talk about some of like your favorite Asian dramas. Oh, before we get into that, actually, I just want to say that's where I started. I started with anime. Like my partner was
Oh.
an anime fan. And that's where I started as well. I watched a bunch of anime even before I started going into Asian dramas. And then Netflix was like, you'll like this. And it was a Chinese drama. And that's kind of like how I made the changeover. But anime was just, and I've recently gotten back into anime because I didn't watch it for a
Ooh.
long while. And then I watched My Happy Marriage and I was like, I
Oh, I love My Happy
love
Ah.
this.
Marriage.
I love this. And it kind of reminded me of how much I enjoy anime. It was that and also The Apothecary Diaries. I
Another one, really good.
loved The Apothecary Diaries. So I can't wait for both like the second seasons next year. But yeah, I'm back on my anime zone now. So and it's like it's just easy because like episodes you just slot one episode in. They're very tiny and manageable. So
Hmm.
Yeah, when you're
so
used to
yeah,
like 70 episode C dramas, fitting in like a 20-minute anime episode is
easy. Yeah, it's like it's
Yeah.
yeah.
well, to be fair though, I think for me, it's never bothered me to have long episode
Mm-hmm.
counts because my first ever Asian drama was 63 episodes. It was
Woof.
Ashes of Love, which is like an epic romance xianxia. And it stars the same lead as Lost You Forever. It stars Yang Zi from Lost You
Oh.
Forever. So it's an epic. It's 63 episodes. There's so much happening that like the story is like gods and demons and all of that good stuff. So I binged that in 3 days flat.
Oh
Like
man.
Whoa.
I was like, I I had not done that because I used to do that with like books. I would just devour books very
Mm-hmm.
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do. I still do nowadays, but uh that I was off work, wasn't working because I had like a Christmas holiday. So like we close up the place that I work for like 2 weeks almost. So I was home, everybody was working, and I was like, I don't have anything to do. And Netflix was like, you should try this. And I pressed play on episode 1 and I looked up and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, what happened? I did not like what even happened? And then I slept for about 3 hours and went right back to watching because I was like, it's like it's something because everything was so new to me. Like I had never
Mm-hmm.
watched anything like it before. So I was like, this is great. And funnily enough, I'm rewatching Ashes of Love now because I'm going to review it for the podcast. And I was so worried. I was like, oh my God, what if I don't like it? This is why I don't like to rewatch stuff because I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if I don't like it as much as I did the
Mm.
first time around? Um, but so far I'm loving it just as much, but like in a different way because I can appreciate it in a different
Mm-hmm.
way now,
Yeah,
like
more
6 years
context.
later. Yeah. So yeah. So that's like how sort of so like long episode counts, they don't necessarily scare me too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um so yeah. So guys, what are some of like your favorite Asian dramas that you've watched so far?
A good question. Okay, so favorite can be a little hard when you have like a long history in your
Mm,
brain, but I know some of the ones that are kind of on the top of my mind right now. I really loved Free Run Beyond Journey's End, which is an anime
mhm.
that ran, was it last year? That was just spectacular. I think I cried every episode from episode 1 to episode 9. So it just kind of left a big impact on me.
Mhm.
But from the K-drama end of things, one that I actually kind of want to go back and watch because of how much I loved it so much, was Search WWW. Uh,
Yes.
Oh yeah.
yeah, which was, I think it just made such a big impact on me. I decided that one of my favorite, and I'm putting quotes around this, but like genres of K-drama was like the three women friends. If there are three women
Mm,
and they're friends, I'm going to watch it because that's Search WWW. 39 was three women, Be
yeah.
Melodramatic. So if there are three ladies and they're going through it together, but they love each other, that's like crack to me. It's so
Yeah.
good. And then I guess, I don't know. I had a viewing hangover after Love Between Fairy and Devil. So that should probably be on that
Mm-hmm.
list, right? Because I think I just couldn't watch anything for like a week
Yeah.
after. I was just too, I had to only watch empty,
Oh
fluffy
man.
things,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, that was a lot. So yeah, we'll go with those three at the top of my mind right now.
Love Between Fairy and Devil is just that drama
Yeah.
for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. Like it's very epic. It's very classic xianxia, like Chinese fantasy. It's very
Mm-hmm.
like what they do is their bread and butter in an essence, because you won't find anything quite like it anywhere else because it's so attuned to their mythology and like their
Mm.
their stories that it's really hard to compare it to anything else out there, I think. Um, but Love Between Fairy and Devil just came out of nowhere, and then
Right?
Yeah.
everybody was like, Chinese dramas, my goodness. And then like last year with Hidden Love, with again, that's a Zhao Lusi drama with Hidden
Yeah.
Love. everybody and their mother was like hidden love, hidden like what is happening? And for someone like myself who's been following like Chinese dramas for 6 years now, it was like all of a sudden people were like, it's okay to watch Chinese dramas because there's this
Mm,
a lot of the time there's this like barrier almost that just
Mhm.
isn't there as much with K dramas because K dramas have blown up so much
right.
that people find it fine. Like there's always new K dramas over on Netflix, so
Mhm.
it's become like more commonplace. But with
Mm,
C dramas, a lot of people are like, as soon as they hear that it's Chinese, it's like, why would we want to watch anything that's like Chinese? Because but I think Love Between Fairy and Devil and then Hidden Love afterwards, that really like blew people out of the water. And then they were like, oh, they're actually like good Chinese dramas out there. So,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, it was really nice as like a long time watcher to see
mm.
all of these new people kind of like discover something that to me is just like something that's very normal because I've been watching it for such a long time. So yeah, I Love Between Fairy and Devil is one of the very few things that I actually like have merch from. So it's hard
Oh,
to find. It's hard to find, but it is out there. I have like stands and I have a mug and whatnot and like
oh,
enamel
that's fun.
pins.
Oh,
But I love merch. Like I wish I could get my hands on more of it, but it's incredibly hard, like as an international viewer to get stuff. But yeah. What about you, Corinne? Like what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, so I'll maybe I like keep my dramas in like separate lanes based on country. So I'll focus maybe on my
Hmm.
favorite C dramas. And I think probably okay, so these are not dramas that I think are perfect dramas, but I think they sort of like encapsulate like what I like.
Hmm. Yeah.
So those would be like Till the End of the Moon, where like the end was a mess, but I was just like neck deep in that drama the whole time I was watching it. Lost You Forever, which I just adored. But and again, the
Mm.
end is kind of a mess of part two, but like
Yeah.
I enjoyed the characters and the journey so much that I'm okay with
Hmm.
it. And then a modern that I really like is Meet Yourself.
I love Meet Yourself. Meet Yourself is like my safe spot. Like I adore that drama so much.
It is such like a comforting drama. Like
Mm.
it just kind of came out of I mean I watched it like a year after it aired, but like that one I watched it I was like, "Oh, like this drama is something special." Like it's like a balm for your soul a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So Meet Yourself, I watched it while it was on air, and it
Mhm.
was like how I always describe it is it's very slice of life, but it deals with so
Mhm.
mm,
much. And how I always say is to me, watching it on air, the experience that I had was that I was coming home and I was like
Yeah.
and
mm.
like being hugged a little bit and I was like
Mhm.
what just checking in on like friends almost,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like what I got from it. I loved Meet Yourself, and I think for the other two, for Till the End of the Moon and Lost You Forever, both of those are very much victims of what we were talking about earlier of the
Mhm.
episode countdown. Because like for Lost You Forever, it was meant to be like 70 something episodes
Mm-hmm.
until the end of the
Mhm.
moon was meant to have been 54 or 56. So I think that really shows in the editing, which is really
Yeah.
frustrating because if you watch like a xianxia, like, 10 Miles of Peach Blossoms or Ashes of Love, which are like considered very classic xianxia dramas, a lot of people will be like, yes, they are much longer, but they are definitely worth the
Mhm.
episode count and
Mm,
everything wraps up so much better, which is something the new episode count hasn't allowed people to
Mhm.
figure out, is like how to wrap everything up and like cut it down and whatnot. But hopefully, because those were already recorded as longer dramas and then had to be
Mhm.
cut
mm-hmm.
down,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully all of those are now out of the way and the new stuff that we're getting has like they know they need to fit in 40 episodes, so
Yeah.
hopefully they can do it slightly better. But yeah, for me yourself, have you watched Go Ahead?
I have it. That's on my list. I really want to watch it, but like I'm afraid it will make me cry a lot. So I've been
It
like
will.
waiting until I have like the
So
emotional bandwidth to deal.
The reason I say that is because it's two screenwriters and the director are exactly the same as Meet Yourself. And
Okay.
you get the same vibes as Meet Yourself, but this is like on a much smaller scale of the found family. It's very focused on
Mm.
the found family. And
Hmm.
it's beautiful. It's honestly like still one of my top dramas that I've watched in terms of like modern day dramas. It's still, yes, that it will like I cried, but it's still got a very hopeful message, you know, of it.
Hmm.
So definitely I would definitely, and I would absolutely check it out before you, because there's a Korean remake. I
Yeah,
haven't
I
watched
saw
it.
that.
I haven't watched it. I'm not going to, just because there's no way I can be fair to it, because I just love the
Mm.
original so much. There's no way I can like separate it in my head.
Hmm.
And I feel like that will be very unfair to the Korean remake, because I just don't think
Mm.
I can be like I can see those characters as
Hmm.
anything, anything else. And also, from what I've heard, the Korean version focuses a lot on the romance, whereas the romance in the original, it's like a tiny, tiny portion, and it's like a lot of people's least favorite part of the original. So yeah. Um so I think that's it. So shall we get into this review today? So
All right.
I'm just going to go through the MDL synopsis, and then we can start, just having a little chat about it. So the MDL synopsis reads: Having finally sold her TV series script, aspiring screenwriter Chen Xiaoqian soon falls under the scrutiny of the male lead, who refuses to act out the role. Vowing to make her script successful, she starts rewriting while napping. She is transported into her own story, becoming the third princess, Shen Qian, a side character. Armed with the knowledge of her own script, in which her character is soon to be killed in the third episode by Prince Han Shu, the male lead, Xiao Qian is determined to stay alive and find her way back home. So this is adapted from the web novel Xuan Wan Zong Desan Gong Zhu, and that is written by Popsicles. Now, a lot of like web novels, people won't put through their like actual names, especially if you're like a danmei writer, because you're
Hmm.
not supposed to write those things. So people just go like through ghost names because that's, easier. So the cast, we've got the wonderful Zhao Lusi. I mean, she doesn't really need any introduction. She's been in Love Like the Galaxy, Hidden Love. She's currently starring in the story of Pearl Girl. So she absolutely needs no introduction. And then we have Ding Yuxi, who plays our male lead Han Shu, and he's been in stuff like Moonlight, and he's been in things like Love You Seven Times. So he's been around as well. I just don't think he's quite had like his big break role as of yet, but we shall see where that lands. And then we also have Zhu Ziqin, who plays Chen Chu Chu, and we have Shang Ying Hao, who plays Pei Hung. So that's kind of like our main cast. Zhao Zhu Xin, so she is the what we call the second female lead. She's been in stuff like Cute Bodyguard, Royal Feast, and Handsome Siblings. And then Sheng Yang Hao, he's been in The Intimate Gamer, Proof of Silence, and The Lady Special. So that's kind of like the things they've been in. This is directed by Cha Xuan Yi, and he's directed Flying Tiger, I Will Never Let You Go, and Fate Blooming. I have watched nothing from this director except this, which is quite interesting because I tend to like at least know one thing or the other, but no. And the screenwriter, it's the same. So the screenwriter is Nan Zen, and they've done My Girl and The Furthest Distance. So this is 24 episodes. It aired all the way back in May 18, 2020 to June 1st, 2020, but I think it was recorded in 2019. They
Mm.
recorded it earlier on in 2019. Chinese dramas always like when we're watching them, you'll be guaranteed that they would have been recorded like at least a year in advance, if not more. But So the original network for this is Tencent Video, but you can find it on Viki. You can find it like for us Europeans, it's WeTV, not Tencent. And then the episodes are about 45 minutes. And
Mhm.
the MDL score for this is an 8.5, and the Douban score is a 7.3, which is really good. Like a 7.3 on Douban is really, really good. So we'll just go into talk about the non-spoiler section. So in this section, we're just going to basically talk about whether we enjoyed it or not, and whether we would recommend it to people. So for me personally, this is a rewatch, and I feel like this is a very nice light-hearted watch. It's very bingeable actually because it's only 24
Mhm.
episodes, so you can watch it fairly quickly, or even if you're slowly watching it, it's funny at times, a lot funny. I think the comedy in this is fairly good. The acting, I was just saying earlier on, basically it's very interesting because while I'm watching The Pearl Girl at the same time as this, it's like a completely different Zhao Lushi. And it's very nice to see kind of like where she came from. This is one of the dramas that I think really blew her onto the scene, and a lot of
Mm.
people started following her after this specific drama. So it was very nice to kind of like rewatch this and kind of see her role in this, because I feel like she's very good at comedy and she does it very well in this drama. So I overall really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rewatch. It kind of fitted my mood in right now because it's, just very lighthearted. But yet it still touches on quite interesting things, because once she goes into the book, or into her TV script, it's quite interesting that one of the territories is ruled by women, and then the other territory is ruled by men. So it does still touch on very interesting topics, even though it doesn't really dive too much into them. So yeah, I think I overall really did enjoy it. What about you guys? What did you think?
Hmm. So this was a first watch for me.
Mm.
And I think reaching the end, I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I think there were things that I did really enjoy about it. Like there were a lot of characters that I thought were fun. And I would text Corinne my reactions to things, and I found myself getting stressed about like the wrong things. Like there were things that you were supposed to be stressed about, and I was like, but
Mm,
what about this minor plot detail?
mm,
So there are definitely characters that I became attached to. But then there were some other things that I don't know, kind of started to grate on me a little
yeah.
bit as the story went on in a way that I couldn't really bypass. So it was kind of this balance of like there were definitely folks that I wanted to follow and know about their story, and then other things that I was like rolling my eyes a little bit while it was happening.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I'm kind of down the middle of the road. I wouldn't not recommend it, but I think I would recommend it with an asterisk, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, this was a rewatch. This was actually one of the first C-dramas that I watched. Because my first C-drama summer, I watched Love Like the Galaxy
Mm,
and Love Between Fairy and Devil. And then like in the breaks between that, while I was waiting for new episodes, I watched The Romance of Tiger and Rose because I was looking for more Zhao Lucy. Excuse me, because I was looking for more Zhao Lucy, and I loved her character in Love Like the Galaxy so much that like I think I give the character here like more grace maybe than she deserves.
yeah.
Uh because I think it's just such a funny performance. And so for my rewatch now, like I do think it really held up for me. Like I still really, really enjoyed it. And I appreciated a lot more of the meta commentary now that I'm a lot
Mm,
like deeper
Mm.
into C-dramas, and like a lot more of the like a lot of just like the irony and like the references and things like that that were going on. Yeah, it's still like I think as any sort of satire doesn't necessarily fully work at the end. Like when you press on like the gender flip too hard, it doesn't quite hold up.
mm-hmm,
But
hmm
mm-hmm.
I enjoy it so much, and like the cast and the characters so much, that like I think it's just like a fun romp that is what it is and is absolutely worth the time of watching.
Yeah. I think it's one of those dramas that it doesn't take itself too seriously. And if
Mhm.
you're gonna go into it, you kind of need to go in knowing that and knowing that
Mm.
you're not gonna get it's not like you're not going in for a masterpiece. That's not what what this is about. If you want, a masterpiece, you'd probably watch something like Love Like the Galaxy, where
Yeah.
the story and the plot is very intricate and there's a lot of connecting and moving aspects to it. But if you just want a straight up, rom-com fun, then this will probably be it. And I think sometimes that's all you want, really. Sometimes you
Mhm.
just want
Hmm.
something you can sort of turn your brain off and be like, oh, this is, funny, and I can, have it and I can watch it for the time being. So I think that's definitely like where this stems from. But yeah, I think overall for me, it does still stand up to what it come. And I think, did I watch it? I can't remember if I don't think I watched it live, but I think I watched it pretty like quite close
Mhm.
to when it just stopped airing back in 2020, because I was already watching Chinese dramas by then. So I
Mm.
think I watched it fairly early on. And now I think I give Chinese dramas a lot of grace a lot of the time. The reason being
Mm.
is that they don't have a lot of freedom. So
Yeah.
when it comes to stories, like I think censorship plays a huge role in anything that comes out of China. And I think I always give it a bit of, grace. And it's really difficult to know specifically what they're going to ban in the next 6 months or
Yeah.
whatever. So there was a time where they couldn't have any time travel, or
Hmm.
there's a time like this type of drama, you don't really see a lot of it. So yeah, there's like rebirth stories. They have to spin it another way because that's not necessarily allowed for censorship. So I think a lot of the time I give dramas a lot of grace when it comes to this sort of aspect. But yeah, I don't think this is like one of those dramas that is going to blow your mind, but it'll entertain you for 24 episodes. If
Mhm.
nothing else, then for Zhao Lusi doing a bang up job at doing comedy, because she does do that fairly well. So I think it's her personality that shines, like her real,
Mm.
not her as the character, but her as like Zalushi. Because if you watch any sort of behind the scenes, she's always like having a great time, and she's always very like trying to make everyone laugh. So, especially in variety, she's naturally very funny, even when she doesn't mean to be. So I think that like that comes through. Um, so yeah, I think we can just rate it and then we can get on into spoilers, because I think that's when we could like get into the nitty gritty.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
the ratings. So how it works is, so we have one teacup, which is it was something I watched. It wasn't good, but something made me finish. And that's like your 1 to 5.5 on MDL. And then two teacups, it's the okay ones. Dramas I don't really recommend, but they were an okay background watch. So these are like your 6 to 7 on MDL. Three teacups is the enjoyable ones. Good dramas, they were enjoyable, and I would recommend to people who enjoy this type of genre. And that's like your 7.5 to your 8 on MGL. Four teacups is the loved ones. These are dramas that I really loved. There might be a couple of problems with them, but overall, an enjoyable drama, and I would recommend to a wider audience. And that's like
Hmm.
8.5 to your 9.5 on MTL. And then, like, you've got the five teacups. Now, these are like your rose glass tinted, dramas where you can find no faults with it. And by this, I mean this rating is reserved for those dramas that you love so much that you're willing to ignore any of the problems that they may have. So these are like your elusive tens on MDL, like your like what Jess would call them, your god tier dramas. So that's where they come from. So for me, I would firmly put this at like a three teacup. It's very middle of the road. It's not, something that I don't even know how to explain. It's enjoyable, But is it something that I really loved? No, I don't think so. I think I can, like, in a year's time after rewatching, I'll vaguely have an idea of what it's about, but I don't think I'm going to be like remembering every detail or, very specific scenes or anything like that. So to me, that's like very middle of the road that I enjoyed it and I would recommend it with like the caveat that if you enjoy this type of genre, like your rom-com, your comedy kind of thing, then this is probably for you. So yeah, so that's my rating. What about you guys? What would you rate to this?
I'm also team three teacups.
Yeah.
Um, because I think there are a lot of bright spots, but there are just some things that in the spoiler section we'll get into that I had a little
Yeah.
bit harder time like wrapping my brain around. But there was a lot of bright spots. So like I think that makes it at least worth recommending. Yeah, three for me.
So for me, I think I'm a little between 3 and 4, but I'm gonna tip it over into 4. Just because I'm so fond of like Zhao Lucy and also like so I wouldn't recommend this as someone's like first C drama or a really early C drama, but if at least have like a couple under your belt and can like appreciate the meta satire of it, then I think it works really well in that lane.
So actually,
Yeah.
interesting note because I think in 2020 we had tried to watch this together, and that would have been my first C drama, and I didn't make it past episode 1 because I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah,
So
I think we were looking for like a meta-ish drama after watching the K-drama Extraordinary You.
Yeah.
So like that is a
Mm-hmm.
genre that I really like, but
Yeah.
it didn't hit yet when I didn't have anything to compare it to.
Right. And it's like I'm familiar with isekai, right? So I get how these kinds of stories work, but it just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it didn't land at that point. So I think that's a really good point. And also LOL on tip. Corinne, good pun there. You're gonna tip to the 4 teacups rather than the 3. I caught that. I heard you.
Yeah. You can always do, like I always say, if you can always go middle of the road and do a 0.5 because we do 0.5s.
I'll stand by my
Yeah,
4. I'll stand by my
yeah.
4 teacups.
Yeah, but we could always, yeah, I think it'll be very interesting if either of you guys watch Love Game in Eastern Fantasy because the
Hmm.
setup is slightly different, but it's similar at the same time because
Mm,
she does fall instead of her own TV script, she kind of falls into a game. So she has to like complete the task to get out of the game. So
Hmm.
it's set of, but it's now 4 years later, so they've moved things and shaken things up a little
hmm.
bit. So if you guys do get to watch it, you'll have to let me know what you think, about that one. But yeah,
Hmm.
so guys, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched it, I mean, this is a 4-year-old drama at this point, so if you haven't, we're going to spoil the heck out of it. So if you've watched it, go ahead and, carry on listening. If you don't like spoilers, this is your warning. Go watch it, come back. If you like spoilers and you haven't watched it, then keep listening. So this is your spoiler warning. So for spoilers, now everything's on the table. I think we can start by talking about characters themselves. And I think it would be, you know, I think the only character we can really start with is Alushi's character because
Yeah.
she's the heart and soul of this drama. Um, for me, I just find that there's something very good about Zalushi playing like this type of almost ditzy sometimes character in the sense that when she falls in, she's very all over the place and she just wants to get out of this space and she doesn't know what's going on. So that was quite interesting to me to see her in this sort of character, but it reminded me because in her last couple of dramas that she's been putting out, she's been taking on more serious roles. And I
Mm,
think like the romance of Tiger and Rose, what I compare it to is the romance of Tiger and Rose is very much an idol drama. And then we
Hmm.
have
mm,
like, the dramas she's been doing more recently, which are definitely more high caliber kind of dramas. but her comedic timing in this, it's so funny. There's a specific scene that I'm remembering where she's completely mummified into these, she's been wrapped up because she was injured, so she's got both her arms completely wrapped up and she's just walking around, with her arms held up. And I'm like, I don't think not everybody could sort of hold out that comedy and it come
Mm,
across and it be not necessarily believable, but it can sometimes come across as like tacky or, a little over the top. But when she does it, it's like, oh, I can laugh along with that. That's, I enjoy that aspect of it.
mm.
So what did you guys think about like her character and, even her growth as a character throughout the drama?
So I also find her just so charismatic that she's just so fun to watch on screen.
Hmm.
Uh, and her physical comedy, like you said, is very, very good. And like watching it even like the second time, I just like was laughing a lot, even when the plot wasn't like especially clever or surprising. I was like, oh,
Hmm.
like she's just so funny that I'm willing to let like a lot of the more chaotic or uninformed things she does slide. Uh a little bit more than Ayanni, who I think had some hang-ups with some of the choices that she was making.
I mean, yeah.
You can go
So,
ahead. I mean, you can speak on it. Speak.
so I will say I really liked Chen Chen as okay. So the actress was fantastic and she was deeply hilarious. And so I enjoyed watching her while also being annoyed at Chen Chen like the entire time. Um, because what I kept thinking is this woman is a terrible writer. So like I know she's a screenwriter and I know the whole setup is like you don't understand love, girl. Like you can't write a love story. You don't know what you're doing. But then she kept like doing all of the tropes in in this media that drive us crazy. So, and I understand that it's a satire, right? So I understand in its way it's poking at those things, but in
Hmm.
poking at them, they were playing them straight. So I'm just like, why are you making these decisions? You have watched dramas before. You know how this works. So there was just so many times that I was like, why are you such a bad writer? Why are you using these tropes? So that just kind of drove me a little crazy and it was hard to like sync up how much I was enjoying watching the actress act with how annoyed I was getting at the acts the character was doing.
See, I think that's like, I always find it interesting because I feel like there's very, very few actors or actresses, in my opinion, if a script is bad, it's very hard for, a actor or actress to pick up on it and like do something with what they're given in an
Mm,
essence. But I feel like
Hmm.
Zhao Lusi is one of those characters that, like you're saying, we you don't necessarily like the actions she's taking because she's like over here trying to get the plot on on the back burner, but then she's trying to like get it going and then she's making all of these decisions which to us as a viewer are very obvious that are gonna go wrong. Like it's so obvious that these are not gonna work. um but yeah, you still enjoy the actress herself. And I think that's quite special that
mm.
even though you're very frustrated with the character, you're like, but why am I enjoying watching her still? Like these are not good choices. Make better choices. Why? So yeah.
Yeah, and
So I
I
think one of the reasons, sorry, that I cut her maybe a little bit more slack, or her character a little bit more
Hmm.
slack, is that I feel like she knows what genre she's in, but she doesn't know what her role as a character is.
Hmm.
So like she is so convinced that Choo Choo is the female lead and that Hanshua is destined to end up with Choo Choo that she makes decisions to try and they make that happen for far longer than she should. Like she does not fundamentally understand until like episode 16 that no, girl,
Yeah.
you're the female lead now.
Yeah. You've changed the whole plot now. Like, there's no point in you trying to get this story back on track. It's never going to go down that route. And I think it's because also, so she's meant to die in episode 3. Like,
Hmm.
mhm.
that's the whole plot of it. And as soon as she doesn't die in episode 3, like that's it. She's changed the whole story now. So there's no point. And I will say she is very clueless about, like it was
Mm-hmm.
like Ayani was saying, she's very clueless about the fact that the male lead very quickly falls in love with her. Like
Mm-hmm.
he becomes, and there she's clueless in general. I'm thinking specifically of an episode where they're meant to be like trying. I think it's the episode where they have to blow up the mine, or they have to do something about
Mm-hmm.
this mine,
Oh yeah.
and
Because the miners are
she's
trapped.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, the miners are trapped and she wants to get them out, but she's like, they've put her under house arrest, so she can't really go anywhere. And she's just like, I need to get somebody to help me. And like Hanshu is literally there going, me, like I will help. And she's just like, oh, maybe I should get, Choo Choo to come and help me, or I should get Peishong to come and help me. And she's like, and she sends her maid off to call for the second male lead. And Hanshu is just like, oh, for the love of God, like, what? So she, in general, I feel like she's a very clueless
Mm-hmm.
character for a lot of the drama. But so yeah, I think that leads to some, like you were saying, some very questionable choices on her end.
Yeah, and I think just the cluelessness was stretched a little far for me because it was hard to sync up that she is a writer, right? Even if she's not the best one, she did get a show picked up, which means that there was something of value in her script, right? So she's a writer, but she's making all of these really clueless decisions about the running of the script. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It did lead to some funny sequences, like when poor Show is trying to get her to pay attention to him in that mind sequence, like that is deeply hilarious. And that she like will look him in the eye and then turn to the left and be like, "Oh, but Peong," and it's like, "Girl, no." Um, so I think it was how long that went on that
Mhm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
drove me a little crazy because it's like, okay, I get it at the beginning. You're a little like you got sucked into a book. This is not normal things to happen. You know, your character needs to survive and all that. But by episode 16, I'm like, girl, you have made your sister look like a fool. How many times? You can't tell she's pissed at you now. You can't
Yeah.
tell that like you are upsetting people with your behavior. I guess it was kind of at that point that I was just a little like, okay, can we get with the program?
I think even that is a little bit of like like you were saying, it's a very satire and very throw, because so a lot of C dramas, one of the biggest complaints that a lot of people have is not as much now, but if you go back like 2 or 3 years, and I think it's specifically in the era that this drama came out, people were just over it because a lot of Chinese dramas were very waterlogged. They were very
Mm,
filled up to the brim, in the essence that they wanted more ad space, and people were just stretching dramas for the sake of getting, because the more episode counts you have, the more space you have to like fit ads in, and you get a
mm,
lot of revenue in that way. So we were getting like, so just a like quick comparison for K
mhm.
dramas, you may get like 100 dramas out, like 100 Korean dramas out in the year, and that's if you put like all of, long format, weekenders, everything. So you may
Web
get like
dramas.
maybe 100 K dramas in a year. Like Chinese dramas, if you put everything together, you're looking at like 900 or plus in a year.
Whoa.
Like there is they put out a lot of content. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go back, say, 2, 3, 4 years ago, that was the case. They were just picking quantity over quality, and there was so much coming out constantly. It was like this churning of dramas, and they were necessarily not good, and they were stretched out, and they were, very filled up to the brim. So
Hmm.
I think like this is a prime example of where they're kind of like throwing a little bit of shade at that. They're stretching things out to like sort of because that's what a lot of people complain about. Nowadays, that happens much, much less. First of all, the quantity of dramas that they, you know, have is much less. But even saying that, so the main platforms, that's Yoku, Aichi, and WeTV or Tencent, they have like their thing. I don't know what it's called. It's kind of like a seminar of sorts where they basically present everything that they're working on, and like
Oh.
it's to like grab attention for it from
Mm-hmm.
advertisers to people. And like they had theirs in the past couple of months, like last month, all three of the major platforms had theirs, and they all have 100+ dramas in the works. Like that is a lot of
Yeah.
content still. So I think that is kind of like what I mean is I think that's like that stretching out.
Mm.
As a viewer, we get very frustrated, and I think they were kind of like stretching it out in the essence that, you know, that's what dramas tend to be. I think even that was a slight comment on, you know, what was happening at the time. It's not as bad now as it was back then, but back then, geez, it was it was bad. Like as a Chinese watcher back then, I was like, this needs to stop. So that's why I think like the 40 episode rule for some dramas, it's a blessing in disguise. Because it's like for historicals, I don't think so. Because historicals need, I feel like they need, and by historicals, I mean like the serious historicals,
Mm.
not
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, Romance of Tiger and Rose is like a period, it's like a period costume, not necessarily like a, you know, serious historical. Um, but yeah, I think I would agree with you that yes, certain things were stretched out very, very far. And she's so clueless for so long of
Mm-hmm.
it. But even saying that, I still enjoyed it. And I think, like Corinne said, I don't know if it's necessarily because I enjoyed the character or if it's because it's
Mm.
Lucy. I do wonder if this had been any other actress, whether I would have just been like, I'm too annoyed at this. I can't, you know, I can't continue. And I think nowadays, if I was watching it for the very first time nowadays and it was another actress, I think I would have a lot less tolerance than I
Mm-hmm.
did, you know, 4 years ago. Because when I watched it, I was in my I will watch anything phase. I won't drop anything. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
now I'm just like, I'm not enjoying it. I'll let it go. So, what about our male lead? What about Ding Yuxi? So he plays the character of Han Shu. Um, I liked his character. I think even his comedic timing was quite good. And I will
Mm-hmm.
say to this day, this is still the only Ding Yuxi drama that I've like completely finished. And it's not
Oh.
necessarily but the thing is, it's not necessarily him as an actor, it's his drama choices that I
Yeah,
haven't
he picks like
enjoyed.
bad
Mm.
scripts.
He
It's a
really does.
problem.
Really does. And the thing is, I think he's a very capable actor. I think he has
Mm-hmm.
um very good like micro expressions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you know, not quite on par with actors like, for me, for example, like the king of micro expressions to me is someone from Till the End of the Moon, Lu
Oh,
Yun-chi. Like that
yeah.
is like top tier micro expressions. But like Ding Yuxi is still like fairly good at playing these roles. And I really liked his character progression because he comes in
Mm-hmm.
and he's very much like a man on a mission. He's gonna, you know, get revenge or whatever. He doesn't want to be married to her. He is going to bring down this kingdom. That is like he's very set on what he's going to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And then well, I don't even think it's that slowly because very quickly he like starts falling in love with her. And I mean, even his entry into the drama where they sort of first meet, and you know, it's very over the top where he jumps out of the carriage to grab her, and he's like very much in white, and she's in like this very bold red color. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I really actually enjoyed his progression as a
Mm-hmm.
character. I think it was a lot of fun to see him go from this like cold closed off character to someone who almost feels like a golden retriever, almost like in love with her. So yeah, I really enjoyed his character as well. So what about you guys? What did you think?
So I really like his character, and I liked it the first time around, but the second time around, since I have seen in the interim the C-drama Goodbye My Princess, he feels like a direct reference to and commentary on the male lead from Goodbye My Princess, which you haven't seen, right, Liliana?
I haven't because I treasure my sanity as of yet.
That I
I
mean,
know.
correct, but
Uh, so so it is on my list to watch.
Mhm.
Again, Jess from the Daybuck. If we do any sort of like episode together as a drama trio, and it's like any slightly historical or any recommendations, she will always say Goodbye My Princess because she loves angsty dramas. And
Mhm.
she loved Goodbye My Princess. She went in absolutely blind to it.
Oh man, at least I knew what
Oh,
I was getting.
Oh
oh
no.
boy.
She she went in blind and she was like, I'm in for the ride. I'm here for it. So yeah, but I heard that Goodbye My Princess, you have to be emotionally ready for it.
You you
And
do. But so
and
like
I yeah.
the male lead in Goodbye My Princess, for people who haven't seen it, is set up as a tragic hero who is so set on gaining power and getting his revenge that he like his actions lead to the downfall and genocide of the family of like the woman he falls in love with. And he has the same sort of like his initial setup is like the same sort of subterfuge that Hanshua's character is like set up to have like that's
Mhm.
who Chen wrote him to be. So it's like if you take that character who was meant to be a tragic hero who like falls and
Mm.
then turn him into like this puppy dog, that yeah, it's just super interesting to take like, oh, like, but what if this guy made different choices actually instead of the ones that led to like high tragedy?
Mhm.
I like Hansho. I like him. I don't really have deep thoughts, but I kind of appreciated how he had to kind of whiplash through all of these different emotions throughout.
Mhm.
I felt like it was acted and played really well. And even though I have not seen Goodbye My Princess because emotional devastation, I don't think I need
Yeah.
it at this point in time. Um, I can definitely see the kind of character that he's playing off of, right? Kind of self-serious, self-important, but like wounded with a tragic backstory kind of a thing going on. So I don't know. I enjoyed watching him fall so hard for Chen Chen. And they had some really cute moments together too. Like after they got drunk and laid in the bushes together and she snuggled up to him for the first
Yeah.
time and he was like, "Oh, maybe I actually kind of like this." I was like, "Okay.
Yeah.
You're adorable, sir, and I support you in your love."
Yeah. Um, I agree. And I think overall, the overall consensus, I think, in general, is that these characters just aren't that deep. It's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's not like one of those dramas where you have these very layered, very, uh, for lack of a better word, these like very meaty characters. This
Hmm.
is not that show.
No.
They're very superficial, and it's not necessarily anything that the actors have done to make them feel that way. I think that's
Mm.
just how they were written. Um,
Yeah, if anything, I think the actors give them more depth than they were written
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And I think that becomes even more obvious when we come to talk about so Chen Chu Chu and Pei Hung as characters. Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, especially for Chu Chu, she is just there as a plot device for a lot
Yeah.
of the drama.
Poor
She's
Choo
just being like,
Choo.
I know. And it's just like, and I feel like she's placed to be someone that by the end you're supposed to really dislike. But I feel like I can't necessarily dislike her because I can't necessarily blame her for the things she does by the end. Because it's just like this character has just been raggedly pushed from one side to the other to like where the sort of plot needs her to be. Because as Chen Chen is adjusting the plot, she, True's kind of like falling off the wagon a little bit. So yeah, what did you guys think about like her arc? Because to me, she just feels like very much a plot device for a lot of the drama, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like so I think I may be doing a little bit too much analysis here and like than the drama even is asking me to do, but I do think it is an interesting question of what happens when you take someone who is supposed to be the female lead and make her not the female lead. Like
Mm,
and like I think one of the things the drama is doing is that, like she wasn't actually one of the problems with the script that
Mm-hmm.
Chen Chen ends up in is that like she didn't write her female lead to be that deep. So when you take this
mm.
female lead whose only character attribute was female lead and you don't give her that anymore,
Right.
what happens to her?
Oh, female lead
Mhm.
and war. Don't forget. She's very
Yes,
good at
and
military.
war.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, very true, very true. And the thing is, even towards the end, like the original script was meant to have a very tragic ending. And the thing I
Mm.
I find it quite interesting because when we start the drama off, so Han Shu, who is supposed to play the male lead in the drama, he says to her, this is garbage. I'm not gonna play this character. And I find that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because she's like, at that point, I think you feel like they're being very harsh to a female lead. But once you actually fall into the story, you kind of think, oh, maybe he had a point. Like he was very harsh, but maybe he has had a little bit of a point that she needed to like clean this up and like edit it and make it, more polished, so to speak.
Mhm.
But yeah, I feel like True is unfortunately just one of those characters that have fallen to the wayside. Funnily enough, this actress, Zhu Chin, she plays a very prominent role in the story of Pearl Girl with Zhao Lusi.
Oh.
She's working with her again, and it's very interesting because they're playing enemies in the story of Pearl Girl.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
so
been a
Ooh.
fun.
lot it's been a lot of fun to kind of revisit and being like, oh, I know you. Like it was very, very interesting to see that, their sort of interactions in this in Pearl Girl while also because I was like watching both at the same time. So it's very interesting to see that aspect of it. And then I think for roles for like main roles. We just have Pei Hung, who, bless him. I mean, what
That
is
poor
there
man.
even to
Poor
poor
Pei
man?
Hung.
I mean, that scene, I did. I think I hope that it was meant to be funny because it can. But where she pretends, where she pretends that she's dead, and he's like, "I'm going to kill myself." Um, and she's lying there in this coffin, and Han Shu is really, really milking it out of him. Like, and poor Pei Hung is just like, if you're not willing to follow her into the afterlife, then I will. And I was like, this is so dramatic that it's like crosses that boundary into being very funny.
Well, like I feel like that was part of the satire actually of like these
Yeah.
really of these tragedies where it's like, buddy, it ain't you're not it. It ain't that deep. You gotta let it go.
I do feel bad
No.
because I laughed at him so much. And like I didn't mean to. I
And
didn't
his
mean to.
suffering too.
Yeah, like, there was a particular scene where Hancho kicked him down the stairs. I didn't mean to laugh with the way he rolled down the stairs. I feel
Oh,
terrible, but it was so funny.
I feel like a lot of these like supposedly very deep scenes are meant to be funny as well at the same time.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's where I was coming from. Because I was like, they sound so over the top, so ridiculous that it's like there's no way they're anything but funny. And like when it comes to Pei Hung, all I could think of is she's just not that into you. Just like it's like
And she said that too, which is the thing that's
Many
funny to me.
times.
She was like, "We're friends, buddy." And he was like, "Friends as in lovers, as in you'll marry me tomorrow." And it's like, no, no.
he's
Oh.
such a delusional character, though. In that aspect, I think he is.
I do find him interesting as a character in like a commentary on like if we look at the gender flip situation.
Mhm.
There are a lot of C drama, like historical or wuxia or jianjia dramas where there is like aside from the female lead, the like one exceptional woman, and he is like the one exceptional man. Like I'm thinking of
Yeah.
the general in Who Rules the World, another Lusi drama, like the
Mhm,
female
mhm.
general character specifically who is like she's kick ass, but like she's the only woman in a position of power.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
and that's sort of like the exception, but like the secondary exception who
Right.
like is there so that like the female lead isn't the only woman in the show, but also like it just like has a ceiling of how much she can do.
Mhm, mhm. And I find really interesting that you brought that point up actually, because he technically by the end, he is the only man in power because he's kind of like taken
Mhm.
over the military power aspect of it. So that is quite interesting. So I think that's really all the characters. I don't think we really need to go that deep into it because like the side characters are unless you guys have a specific character that you really want to talk about, apart from those four.
Well, just really quickly, I want to do a
Hmm.
quick shout out to Mudang, my himbo barbarian.
Oh
He stole
yeah,
my heart. I adore
yeah,
him.
he's adorable.
But
He's so
also,
funny.
oh, he's
He's so
hilarious.
funny.
Every scene he's in, he's a treat. Like when he caught the marriage ball and was like, "Oh, I can't marry her," and then threw it away. Oh, he's amazing. But also, can we take a second to talk about the eldest sister, Yan Yan?
Oh
Um,
my gosh, yes,
because I
yes.
think she was a really interesting character that I found myself
Hmm.
rooting for throughout the drama.
Hmm.
Um, and Corinne and I were having a little bit of conversation about how her illness was handled over the
Hmm.
course of the drama in a way that was really interesting. Because it felt like in a lot of ways to me, she was devalued by all of the folks around her in
Hmm.
the story that Chen Chen wrote. But honestly, she to me felt like the one who would make the most sense to be the next city master,
Yeah,
right? Um,
yeah.
and in a way, that's something that was never kind of like addressed because so much of the show was about Chen Chen and Choo Choo that like she was just kind of put to the side. She had her great story with Sumu, which I 100% support. I support their love.
Mm.
But but it was just something to me that by the time I reached the end, I'm kind of like she was never really part of that conversation because she was always written off for her illness, which I think
Mhm.
was kind of like a missed opportunity in some
Yeah.
ways. But Corinne, I know you had some kind of like other thoughts about how her disability was handled.
Yeah, so thinking about like from a disability studies perspective a little bit. So just for context for people who don't listen to our podcast, Ayani
Mm-hmm.
and I add some like analysis and bring some of our like academic background to how we think about pop culture. But so thinking about disability studies, one of the common pitfalls of portraying disability in fantasy is the trope of the magical cure,
Mm-hmm.
which we have like note for note with the dragon bone cure for
Yep.
Hanshu's heart disease.
Hmm.
Which sort of then suggests that one of the like critiques of that trope is that it suggests that someone who is disabled has no place in fantasy stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that Yanyan's disability, which is much more visible than Hanshu's, like his like
Right.
heart disease, he just like acts
Coughs.
faint sometimes, like clutches his chest, whatever. But she's like actually in a wheelchair. And I think it is interesting that like they point out that like oh like the when she like feels betrayed that Chen Chen stole the dragon bone for Hanshu and never like stole it for her, her attendant was like, okay, well like yeah, that was never gonna work for you. So there a magical cure for her was not possible.
Mm-hmm.
But also she can do like I just kind of loved actually that Chen Chen's solution for Yan Yuan to help her was like, girl, do physical
Yeah,
therapy.
do your PT, which
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
mood.
Do your rehab. And like she doesn't ever get like cured, but she does more in order to like empower herself
Yep.
Hmm.
to like do more than she was letting herself do. Even if other people did not give her those opportunities, she had to figure out how to take that for herself. And I don't think it was
Hmm.
like perfectly handled at the end, but
Hmm.
like I did appreciate that as a sort of counterpoint to like the magical cure narrative.
Yeah, I mean, and I will
Yeah.
say her walking down the ceremony with assistance like did bring some tears to my eyes actually
Mm.
at the end because it felt like this was I don't know, this was a narrative that I became personally invested in, right? Her and how she saw herself and how she saw herself in relation to her sisters. So her kind of making that walk at the end and then having this proclamation of like this is something I did for myself, right? I don't even want to be city master, but like I've claimed this part of my life back. I thought
Mm.
was really one of the more poignant moments of the show for me, actually.
Yeah. And I think like their romance was like one of the healthiest ones in the show as well.
Yeah.
Because he's so supportive of her and he kind of is just there regardless of how everyone else perceives him. Because everybody just thinks, that he's not worthy of even being in her presence a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But he
Mm-hmm.
kind of like pushes that aside to get through to the person that she is. And I think theirs was a really, really nice, a really nice relationship. And I do completely agree with what you were both saying about like disability in fantasy dramas and in historicals, just in general, even in modern dramas. It's very rarely handled, completely adequately. Um,
Hmm.
I think the only place where I've sort of seen it handled and there was no magical cure, there was nothing. It was Nirvana in Fire. Like the male lead has this disease and he kind of there's no cure for that. And that's that.
Hmm.
Which I found, interesting because I do agree that sometimes we have these plot stories, like you were saying with Han Shu, where he's been sick all of his life and then all of a sudden he's not sick anymore because this magical cure has come out of nowhere. And again, that just brings it in this, specific storyline. I think it was just another plot point to bring the
Mm-hmm.
couple closer together
Mm-hmm.
because
Hmm.
she sacrificed something that's very holy to her village and then she's paying the price for that to save him. And then it comes the scenes where he's supposed to die, which his head is on a chopping block like a couple of times.
Yeah.
Bless Anshu, but his head is on a. But I do actually like that aspect of it in the sense that it's not Choo Choo, it's Chen Chen coming to the rescue as opposed to having. He
Hmm.
feels like the damsel in distress a
Oh,
lot of
for
the
sure.
time.
For sure.
And I enjoyed that sort of like role reversal. We don't get it a lot of the time, but I truly enjoyed that, role reversal. And I will say that's something to Zhao Luxi's characters that she tends to play wherever. It's that she tends to be a quite um I don't know, savvy and powerful female lead on her own right.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And that is something that is common to most of her characters as a whole. I mean, Love Like the Galaxy being one of them. She is very
Yeah.
much her own person. So and this one, it's the same thing. For all of her cluelessness and for all of her, whatever it may be, I do enjoy the aspect that it she comes to the rescue quite a few times, and that's
Mm,
a fun, place to sort of see, I think.
Hmm.
yeah.
So, should we just talk about? I think we can just talk about sort of, you know, storytelling and scenes and dialogue. If there's any that you guys really want to speak on, we can sort of talk about that now. And yeah, for me, I think one of the scenes that I enjoyed, and I don't know if it's necessarily like a great scene, But it is like one of those scenes where his head is on the chopping block and she kind of runs in and saves him. And Hanshu just kind of sees her in a whole new light because he wasn't expecting to be saved. And they're kind of like clutching at each other. And her mother then, sort of lets him go. So I enjoyed that scene. But what scenes did you guys think that, we've already touched on a few, but is there
Mhm.
any scenes you really want to talk about?
I think a standout scene for me where Lucy's comedic chops are really on display is when Hanshu comes to save her after she's been kidnapped by the bandits.
Oh my
And she
gosh,
is
yes.
instead now the king of the bandits herself, and also drunk off her ass. And like has this whole sequence with Hanshu and Zerua, her attendant, and it's like, who's that handsome man? He's my husband? What? How did that happen? Well, I'm a kidnap him again. And I just like, she's so funny.
She's so
Hanshu is
funny.
so like distraught that this has happened and like want and like is regretful, and she's also like so dramatically like, oh, I like, you're here but I can't, you belong to the female lead, and it's so funny. And
Yeah.
then she also counts his abs, which I think is a nice
Oh yeah.
touch.
She's very funny. I really liked that whole like section where we have like the
Mhm.
barbarians. It was just very fun and and an enjoyable sort of pause because after that everything gets a little bit more serious, I think, after
Mm-hmm.
that sort of segment. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well.
Good one. Um, let's see. One is a scene that I really enjoyed. Um, so the one, it's funny because I had one and then you started talking about the barbarians, and now my brain is just filled with Mudang, and I try to actually think of something that does not involve him. But there is a sequence. Oh, I know the fight the during the City Master test where
Oh yeah.
Chen Chen is just running from, is it Linky, right? Who
Yeah, yeah.
our queen of the whip. And that whole like fight sequence, which starts off super
So
comedic with her
funny.
ridiculous like straw armor running around and screaming, but then like turns to be this really dramatic sequence of her like resisting and withstanding the abuse that
Mhm.
And
she's
refusing
getting.
to yield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that coming back to Yanya, so that her sister can see her doing this, so she can like
Hmm.
want to do the PT, but also that's such an interesting kind of exchange between Pehong ringing the bell and her kind of saying, "You're not my husband, you're not my
Hmm.
family, you
Hmm.
can't do this for me," and making that kind of turn towards Han Shou, who understands her for what it's worth. Like he still makes her city master, right? Or young city master, but understands what she's trying to do in this moment. I think it was a great kind of touch point between all of these different characters and how they're interacting with each other and how they're
Hmm.
moving the story around. Like I know we're saying that a lot of this the characters are not that deep, right? But I really do appreciate these moments when the story shows us how it's the characters interacting with each other that are
Hmm.
creating kind of like the ripples that move out through the rest of the story. Which is again one of the reasons why Chen Chen not getting it makes me so bad because I'm like, girl, it's right there in front of your face, but it's fine. But yeah, I really like that whole sequence because I do think it really eloquently moved from like this comedy to something that was a lot more like heartfelt and impactful.
Hmm.
I think that's maybe also one of the scenes where we can sort of see hints of, because we see like Lucy's amazing comedy in this drama a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
like we see sort of like the seeds of her dramatic potential that she
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
has grown into a lot over the past few years. And like really since I was watching this alongside Love Like the Galaxy for the first time, it was like, oh, like you have like the foundation to play some like high tragedy here,
Mm-hmm.
like you can like control the tone of what's going on. I don't know if it's like my favorite scene, but another scene where you can sort of see her like controlling the tone is like the scene where she betrays Hanshu and like tells him,
Mm.
"Oh, I never loved you. I was lying the whole time. I
Not
never
my
lost
favorite
my
scene at
martial
all.
art." Oh yeah, that's like it's an upsetting scene, but I think that is a scene where you see her acting and her potential for drama and tragedy coming
Mm.
through a little bit more. And there's
I
like the
think
beginning of that with the fight scene you were mentioning, Ayani.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to that fight scene, I really, really liked it because, like you said, it does flow. Because at the beginning, you're just thinking, what is happening? She's gonna like that. She's got this suit on and she's fighting in slow motion with the girl, and she's
I forgot
like,
about that. You're right. Oh,
Ridiculous.
that was so
it's
funny.
ridiculous. And she's like, it's ridiculous. But then you kind of understand her. By the end of that scene, she is getting whipped over and over again. And like Fei Hung does do that. And it kind of shows in that moment why Han Shu would always be the right choice for her because
Yep.
he understands the character, the person she is and why
Yeah.
she has to do what she has to do. And although it's costing him everything to just like sit there, sometimes it's harder to be like, to not do something than it is to do something.
Oh,
And I
yes.
think
Yeah.
that was such a scene that for a drama that we do say is not that deep was like a deeper scene
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
Pei Hung is just like, oh, how can you stand there and just watch her suffer? And it's like, no, he's choosing to honor her wishes, choosing to
Right.
trust her choices and letting her do what she wants to do rather than exerting his will over hers. And I think that was a really, really powerful scene in that aspect. But also, once you find out why she's just like standing this abuse, you kind of feel even more because, the sister, she's always been ignored and she's always been
Right.
pushed to a corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's truly the first time where she's like, oh, my sister cares for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
she, there is love there. And I really appreciated that whole scene. And like Corinne was saying, Zhao Lusi, when she does do dramatic, when she cries, it is
Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
goodness.
She's really good
beautiful.
crier. Yeah.
It's beautiful on screen and she has no qualms. And by beautiful, I don't mean like she's beautiful when she cries. I mean like she's not afraid to go to those really dark
Mm.
places
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to like be ugly sobbing crying on screen. And I think it takes a lot for an actor to do that or an actress. I think for me, for example, Bai Lu is another actress that does that
Oh
very
yeah.
well. There's scenes where you actually see the behind the scenes, and there's one scene specifically for Bai Lu in One and Only where they had to send her home because she
Oh,
could just
oh
simply
my gosh.
not get out of character.
Oh,
She
oh my
she
That
goodness.
drama,
she couldn't
man.
stop. She couldn't stop. She was like, it was street crying, and she could not get out of her character. So the
I think
director
I know the scene you
actually,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
well, yeah, if you've
Yeah.
watched it, you would have known. And she literally was sent home because she was like, I can't, she couldn't get out of the character. Wang Di, for example, in Love Between Fairy and Devil, you both have watched it, haven't you? So,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
the scene where Orchid dies in his arms, you
Oh,
see the behind the scenes for that. If you
That poor
haven't,
man.
do yourself a favor, go watch the behind the scenes because it's like Esther Yu crying, can't stop, and she's comforting Wang Hedi, and he's like, he can't get out of that headspace. And I think there's something to say for when an actor or an actress gives themselves into that role
mm.
so much that there's nothing to it. Like it grabs at your heartstrings so much
Mm-hmm.
and it comes
Mm-hmm.
through on screen. And I think, like Corinne was saying, that scene where she's telling Hanshu to kind of go, and there's a couple of other scenes where you can start to see what Zhao Lushi can truly do.
Mm.
So yeah, I loved that aspect of a character, but obviously that's not the drama. This is not the drama where she's gonna give because there's just no room for that. This
Mm-mm.
is
Mhm.
very much, a rom-com, but I will say I am so glad that she has started to change up the roles she does because
Mm.
goodness, by the time you hit Love Like the Galaxy and by the time you hit Pearl Girl, it's like night and day. You are watching
Mm.
like someone who's, very much transformed. But if you watch, this one, you see the seeds, like Corinne was saying, you see where she's kind of like started it. So yeah, but that fight scene was one that it's I think it's one of the deeper scenes in the
Yeah.
whole drama,
Hmm.
actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think like a lot of the scenes, I don't even have that many written down because overall, like I just don't think like overall, and even normally when I write down any sort of dialogue or anything, it tends to be dialogue that is like, I don't know what to call it, but it tends to be like rememberable dialogue. But I just don't think there was that much, in this for me. Was there any kind of like dialogue that stood out for you guys at all?
So I don't know if there was specific dialogue, but I do think there were moments when thinking about gender and patriarchy that I think
Mm,
are interesting, but it's more in like the setup and
yeah.
like what does it mean? I don't know, like what does gender inequality look like? And like it does have the sort of like surface, like obviously like a strict matriarchy is not actually preferable to a strict patriarchy.
Yeah.
But and especially as like Choo Choo descends into like
Madness.
the worst of the worst, like men
Mm,
are nothing, like stuff. But like I so Ayani and I were talking about this a little bit about
Hmm.
like what it means to actually be in so maybe this is like a difference between like dialogue and actions is
hmm
Mm,
what I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about it because like Chen Chen doesn't say a lot that is very
Right.
No.
convincing about why gender equality is
Hmm
important, but a lot of her actions back up that she actually believes that in like
Hmm.
wanting to rescue the miners even though they're men or like supporting Pehong in wanting to be a minister. And like she's
hmm
not eloquent about it, but like she is very sort of like steady in like in supporting that belief with her actions.
hmm
So I think I
hmm
took your question and answered a different question, but
It's funny because I
Yeah.
actually kind of want to bounce off that really quickly because maybe
hmm
we can expand that out to like the show on whole. Because something I was thinking about was Hansho's mother, right? And that sequence
mm
where she's like, bump this, I'm gonna be the Minister of Defense now. And I don't think it was the most eloquently written, right? It was kind of
mm
a little and I mean, again, this is from like our context in the world that we live in and all that kind of stuff, right? But it was a little kind of like on the nose, like, why don't you stop doing this thing that you love just because your husband said, like, it's a little
hmm
obvious. But again, thinking about actions, she very quickly made the decision that this is who she was going to be and what she was going to do. So it wasn't really like a waffly kind of a thing. And it felt like the show was making a statement about what is actually correct in these moments, right? As opposed to, eloquently talking about it and then nothing's being done. Does that make sense?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. No, that's actually something that I wouldn't have thought about until you guys brought it up. But now that you mentioned it, I think it actually works out really well for her character because it's just like you said. I think this one is almost one of those that fits the saying, actions speak louder than words. And I
Mm-hmm.
think throughout, her actions definitely speak louder than her words because she does, Chen, and even, um other characters tend to waffle on a bit, but then their actions
Mm-hmm.
truly show their allegiances. And I think that's something that's quite good about, the drama as a whole. Um, I think I just had down so costumes, sets, and OST. Now, this OST is for me, there's not a lot memorable about it because I didn't
It's
remember any
fine.
of the songs. It's fine. It's fine, but it's not like, there is some OSTs to me that I hear the first bars and I know exactly what drama it's from, and
Hmm.
it's on my constant repeats and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
not one of them. I don't think I could even pick out one of the songs from it, if I'm being honest.
I do like the
Um,
ending song. That's been
mm,
stuck in my head over the last couple of days.
think that might be the one because I think Zhao Lusi sung one of them, and I'm
Oh,
not sure if that might be because she sings really well as well. Of course she does.
yeah.
And she plays. Did you guys know that she plays the? oh my God, I'm gonna forget. How could I forget the name? It's the traditional Chinese instrument where
Oh, the
it's
zither?
like on, yeah, she plays that. And she plays it
Amazing.
beautifully as well. Um, so yeah, I think that might be one of the songs that she did,
Well,
but
I think it's
I can't.
a male singer who does the ending
Oh,
song.
oh, then maybe not. Then maybe not. But I think she did do one of the songs for this. But yeah, I just don't think it was one of those. I have very specific OST singers that I will
Oh
remember
yeah.
them constantly. Like one of them being Lu Yuning. If it's a Lu Yuning song, like
Oh
it's
yeah.
gonna be good. Because this man is so incredibly talented at doing OSTs. Not only is he a good actor, but he's so incredibly talented at doing OSTs that you can recognize straight
Hmm.
away. I mean, it's the same thing with Love Between Fairy and Devil. You will
Hmm.
know that song anywhere. So yeah, but I don't think the OST was something for, that. And I think this was a slightly lower budget kind of drama.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
at the time, neither the actor nor the actress were that big. Compared, to now, where both of them are fairly big. Um, as an actor and actress, the costuming in this was actually kind of okay. I didn't find it like very over the top or anything like that, but for a historical, I found it okay.
I kind of, so it did have the feeling a little bit of being made on like $5 in a dream,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
Yeah.
given that feeling, I did actually appreciate the very sort of consistent styling of the
Yeah.
different
Hmm.
cities,
Hmm.
and like I loved Zhao Luxi's hair
Yeah, the
through
hair
a
was
lot of
actually
it.
really nice.
Like I liked the consistent vibe of it, even if it didn't necessarily feel like super lush costuming. It did feel very
Mm-hmm.
intentional.
Yeah. I did not like the only hair that I thought was a bit funny was right. I think it's her first hair when she's in that red outfit.
Oh
That,
yeah.
that one felt a little off. But after that, I felt like they were fairly good. And it was nice to see because obviously once she's married, they're supposed to wear their hair up. And that was very consistent for her. And I really,
Mm.
really enjoyed, that aspect of it. And they were quite nice wigs. Like I've seen far worse wigs than there was in this
Yeah.
one for absolute sure. Um, so I think I might be mistaken, but I think it's like Tang Dynasty influenced styling. Not necessarily accurate, but I believe it's Tang Dynasty influenced. So that's the kind of like styling, at least for her city. I
Hmm.
think the Hanshu city is a slightly different kind of styling, but I appreciated that, distinction between the two. But yeah, so should we just go on and just basically we can wrap it up by saying what did we think about the ending and anything that we think could have been done slightly better? What did you guys think?
It was fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I if we go like all the way back to the very, very, very end when she meets with the actor in the hospital room, I
Mm.
don't know. I was kind of like, okay, I guess because you don't want this to be a tragedy, they're gonna remember each other. But I wasn't really convinced by it, you
Yeah,
know?
no,
I was like,
no.
okay.
Because he was just like, well, I had this dream, like, and in this dream, this happened. And I was like, okay. So do you feel like this really happened? Or, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden she's in his arms and, she's, uh, that you've got photographers coming in and
Yeah.
whatnot. And I do wish, for me personally, I wish there was one change that I wish I could have made. It would have been for the portion where they're actually in the story to be shorter and then to them maybe
Ah,
flesh out their modern day romance. I feel like that would have made it, I don't know. It would have made it for, I think, a tighter script in the story part. And then they could have made the 24 episodes up by like showing up their modern day and even like her changing the script and her like and them recording the story.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that would have worked really well. So that's like the main thing that because at the end of the day like we've said many a times, it's just not that deep. It's an okay what, it's okay. Like it's a fun watch. It's a fun time. But I feel like the main thing that I would change would be that shorter on like the plot that they're in the story, and then give like the last couple of episodes to them in the modern world, like her changing it up and redoing this. And I think that would be a lot of fun to watch.
So it's funny, bouncing off of that. I know there's been a change or a turn recently in a lot of like anime isekai where there's been stories that are looking at, okay, so what happens after the adventure? Where you've had
Mm,
this whole adventure in another universe and then you come back to Earth and nobody believes
mhm,
you. I think there's one that's called like Uncle from Another Universe or something like that, which like he
mhm.
returns back to his bodies and he's in his 40s or something, and he went on this grand adventure and everyone's like, okay, buddy, cool. So I think I'm really on board with your idea that I think it would have been really interesting to have them come back. Because also the question I have, right, is the actor had this dream, but it wasn't the same of like having he wasn't transmigrated or what have you, right?
Exactly.
He didn't
He
go
didn't
through it
know
in
when
the
he was
same
in
way.
there.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So I was suddenly super interested about the fact of like, okay, well, how do you navigate your life now having two
Mhm.
sets of memories, right? What does that do? I wanted that I'm couch quarterbacking in a way that makes me feel like, okay, I technically maybe would have wanted a different story. And I think that's fair, right? It's fair to say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But also within the confines of this story itself, I think it would have been really interesting to like
Mm.
watch them have to navigate now having had that past life in the present and what it means for their relationship rom-comminess,
Mm.
as they're working
Mhm.
together.
No,
So I
I
will
do.
say, so I agree with both of you, but I will say I did sort of like, or one of the questions that is interesting to me in these sort of transmigration dramas where you're like in a story and know you're going to leave probably is how to navigate that. And I appreciated the tragedy of Honshu being like, I'm dying.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
need to get you out of here. There is no
Mm.
reason for you to stay here if I'm gone,
I'm
even if
dead.
it means
Yeah.
that I will end my life alone, however much is left of it, which is like a little bit heavier, I think, than the drama sometimes gets.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
but like that sort of dilemma, um, even in like very slight transmigration dramas. So like I watched one earlier this year called I think Different Princess, which was the same kind of like a novelist
Yeah.
gets sucked
Hmm.
into her story, and that was like very I enjoyed it, but it was very mid. But the more sort of poignant parts of that story even was like the the female lead being like, I'm disappearing from the story. I cannot stay with you, even if I want to. So what does that mean? And that
Hmm.
sort of dilemma of like, this is not my world. I love you, but I don't know what to do with that information. I kind of like
Yeah.
Mhm.
appreciated how it dealt with that.
I'd almost
Yeah.
want a story that really sat with that in a way that was more serious, right?
Hmm.
Because
Mm.
I think that's such an interesting like push and pull in these stories is like I'm not from here actually, right? There are certain things that like I couldn't imagine going back to I don't know medieval England, right? There's just things that I expect like penicillin, So I think there's so much about that could be interesting, but
I
maybe not
think
for like a rom-com.
no, there is one, and it's a K-drama, and it happens the other way around. Have you watched The Contract of Park's Marriage? It stars Issa
No,
Young.
I haven't. I need to.
So basically that story is she is in Joseon. So she's and the character is there as well. And then she gets sent to the future. So as opposed of
Mm,
going backwards, she goes forwards. And that does sit with that story a bit more because at
mhm,
first she's just trying to go back. It does lean into comedy as well, but it's Issa Young. Like I love that actress a lot. So she's basically like sitting with that information, and then what do they do with it? And there's
mm.
like a fantasy element, and she does eventually go back to her own time, and
Ooh.
that it's quite interesting to see like what happens there, because there's like more stuff happens. But I really liked that one, and I think that is one that delves a little deeper into the what
Hmm.
ifs. And there's a lot of times where the male lead kind of, after they've fallen in love, he runs in and she is out somewhere and he's like desperately looking for her because he thinks she's gone. And
Oh,
it's like, so it does delve into that situation a bit more. So I enjoyed that drama. I thought, it's 12 episodes as well for a K-drama, so it is shorter, but I do think it worked out. I really liked it.
where's that one
Overall,
streaming?
I think it might be Vicky.
I think it's on
Oh,
Vicky, yeah.
I
I
love a
think it's
Vicky watch.
Vicky.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's on Vicky. But yeah, I think that one is like more along the lines of dealing with the fact that these characters, and yes, you have a lot of fun with the fact that she, has no clue what the heck's going on. Like she doesn't know. And also she was an aristocrat lady in Joseon. So
Oh,
all of a sudden she's like, I don't know what's happening. Like I don't like she's got to work and she has to do all of these things.
not work.
And
No.
yeah, so it's very, very interesting. So yeah, so I think the main setup for that is the fact that she gets married off to somebody, and that someone dies on their wedding night. And
Oh.
then she is basically like stuck as a widow, and she's like, there's this whole conspiracy behind it. So I really liked it. But like we were saying, I think that is one that kind of explores those aspects of what happens. We're in the wrong time period. Like, what is going to
Mm-hmm.
happen to us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
as a
like,
couple?
I feel like that's also a question that like it pushes too hard on comedy and often turns to tragedy unless the person can stay. So like even thinking about like we're getting a little far afield here, but thinking of like about Till the End of the Moon even with like Lee Susu going back in time and that
Mhm.
being like that's not her time. Even though she's
No.
like there to like, make changes, make moves, stop the rise of the devil god or whatever. Like there is like that pressure of like she's not there forever, so then it turns into tragedy. So like there's almost like a limit to how much you can press on that and
Mm.
still have it stay in the same genre.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but see, for me, when it comes to Till the End of the Moon, I never saw it as a rom-com or any, like, to
Oh
me,
yeah,
that
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 so
was
they could go
always
there.
like they could go there because that is a tragedy. Like that's a
Uh-huh.
tragic drama in general. So I
Oh
think you have
yeah.
to be very like whenever I think that topic comes down to you have to know your story and you have
Yeah.
to know what genre you want to stay in.
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
very much an upholder of if you try to dabble in too many genres, the story completely loses its sense of identity. There is time and space for being able to be, various things within one drama, but I think it takes a very qualified kind of screenwriter to be able to
Mm.
do that well without, mixing up the genres so much that the story gets muddy, I think.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for something like Till the End of the Moon, that is very much a tragedy. I was never ever expect like I people kept saying, "Oh, I think we can hope for a happy ending." And I was like,
Mm-mm-mm.
"No.
No, you cannot.
There's no way. Like where are we watching the same drama? I started this and within a couple of episodes, I knew I was going to be brokenhearted by the end. So I just sat down and enjoyed the ride. There
Yeah.
was
Well, like
the
that's one where they like I think use the transmigration setup for like moments of levity before settling back into tragedy
hmm
as
hmm
opposed to like Romance of Tiger and Rose being like comedy
yeah.
and the migration leads to moments of tragedy. So like it's and obviously like Till the End of the Moon is doing like way more stuff, but like that is I think where the balance of the genre is different.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's it, guys. Have you got any last thoughts or anything else you want to say about this drama at all?
A quick shout out from me to Rizua and Bai Ji, the two
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
attendants. I think they
They're
were so
so funny.
funny.
Yeah.
And like, but their support, I think, helped make like Chin 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 and Hong Shua funnier
Yeah,
because
Mhm.
they
agreed.
were a sort of outlet for like Chin 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 to say like wild shit to Rizua and just have her be like running around and him like goofily running after her. Like that really I think like upped the comedy for me a lot, and especially like
Mm.
the physical comedy.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything real to say, though I guess last shout out could be to the City Master's fun headpiece that she wore all the time, her
Yeah.
dangly forehead situation,
Yeah.
because I would like one, please. I think I would look great wearing that to work. So,
Yeah. I think like the only thing I just popped into my head randomly was the fact that I quite enjoyed the scenes between where Chen Chen would go to the storytellers to try and
Oh
figure out
oh
yeah,
how
my
that's
to
so
find
God,
funny.
we didn't talk about the storytellers. I loved them.
how she's trying to get them to be like, what do I do? How do I tell this story? Like, where do I go? So I actually, I thought it literally just popped into my head as, I was thinking about last thoughts and I was like, oh my goodness, they were fun to have on board. So,
I
so
love the
yeah.
reveal, like when the last time she sees them, when they like reveal that like they knew that she was talking about her own story the whole time, and she's
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
"How did you know?" And they're like, "Girl, it was so obvious, like
See,
from the beginning."
real storytellers understood what was happening.
Yeah. And the thing is, it was so funny because she was like, do I go in this direction? And you just have three storytellers looking at her like, what are you doing? So I feel like they were kind of like, I feel like, do you know what? They could almost be the audience in an essence
Oh yeah,
of being like, girl, what are you doing? So yeah, I think they definitely deserve a little shout out to them. But apart from that, I think that is it. That is it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you?
That's a great question. So, you can find Sex Love Literature on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So you just need to search Sex Love Literature and will appear. It's stylized with a period after every word, but I feel like if you just type it in, it's fine. You can also find our socials. We're on Instagram at Sex Love Lit Podcast. We're also on Tumblr at Sex Love Lit Podcast. And we have a website, sexlovelitpodcast.com. But we don't really hang out there. That's more of just like a space on the internet.
yeah, we
Um,
do. So for kinds of episodes you might find, we do have like occasional Asian drama podcasts. So like we have uh a series on Love You on Lost You Forever.
yeah.
We also did Love Between Fairy and Devil, and we dip into K-dramas, I think, somewhat regularly, but we
Mm.
also get into more Western media like Bridgerton. We're planning episodes on Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series. So
So you just said so actually
Oh,
fun fact, I'm not reading A Court of Thorns and Roses because I did start book one. I read book one and I wasn't that into it. So that actually held
very
me
fair.
from read I there's just something about that female protagonist that I don't
oh,
know. I don't know.
girl, we're gonna get into it in the
Right.
episodes.
Right. I'll have to listen to it because, like, I don't know. There's just something about that series that doesn't quite click for me. But then there's Throne of Glass, and oh my God. My God, I think this is gonna go down. I'm literally listening. I have three books. I've listening to book uh five now, so I've got six and seven left to read, plus a book of novellas, which I should have read at the beginning, but I didn't know that. So I'm gonna like read
I'll
after
get
episode
there.
five because I'm talking to a friend about it and she says, yeah, you should definitely read that like before you get into the last couple of books because it'll make more sense. But my goodness, I was like, this cannot be the same writer that did A Court of Thorns and Roses because Throne of Glass just feels like a whole different like genre. And I'm like, a whole different set. And this was her
Hmm.
first series. Like Throne of Glass was her first series.
Hmm.
And I'm like, my goodness, the world building and the weaving and it's so good. So I'm very, like you mentioned, Sarah J. Maas, and I'm like, I'm very much in my era for her right now because I'm reading, I'm going through Throne of Glass. But I'll definitely be checking out your guys' thoughts on I don't know, there was just something about it that I don't know. But then again, for Throne of Glass, she's an assassin, and I'm like, this is so good. So it's a very different. Whereas I think with Fair, for like a Court of Thorns and Roses, she feels like a weaker character that's going to come into her own, I'm supposing. But for Throne of Glass, I'm just like, this girl starts off powerful, and I'm like, I kind of, yeah, I'm kind of here for it. But I'll definitely be checking that one out.
Please and thank you.
I-
Oh, and just also as a note, we do have a Spotify playlist that is all of our talk about Korean, Chinese, and Japanese dramas if you want a nice
mm.
succinct place to find them.
I will, if you guys send me over the links, I'll make sure to pop all of those in the episode notes so people can have easy access to them. But thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
that is it, guys. That is the episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.